everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is Get Unstuck, how to find an internship. So my name is Rebecca Wright. I'm an internship manager at Mass Art. And then I also have Meg here, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Meg, the student outreach manager at Career Development.
So I have slides I'm going to go through. If you have questions along the way, feel free to pop them in the chat. We can answer them as we go, but most likely we'll answer most questions at the end of the session. So I'm going to go over the slides, but let's see. Yeah, I will get started with the slides, but if you have any questions, like just let us know in the chat and we will get to them when we're able. So like I've said, this is Get Unstuck, how to find an internship. And I'm going to start with the usual places that people tend to get stuck with an internship or job search. So sometimes you're thinking about doing an internship, but you don't know where to start. And I call that checkpoint one. It's just kind of the beginning stage. And so you might be there. Maybe you've been applying to internships. Perhaps you've heard back from some, but maybe you haven't heard back yet and you're wondering, what to do. That I call checkpoint two. And perhaps you got as far as having an interview and you didn't get past that step or you're stuck at that step. So I call that checkpoint three. So these are the typical places where people tend to feel stuck when they're looking for an opportunity, whether it's a job or an internship. So this session is going to talk about some ways to think about how to move things forward. And I find it really helpful to kind of step outside yourself, which I know is hard to do, but try and understand it kind of outside yourself, like from the employer's perspective, because a lot of hiring is driven by the employer's needs. So it's helpful to think about what they do, what is their business need, what do they look for in an applicant, and what is their hiring process. And sometimes it's also helpful to think about real world constraints, like maybe they have a certain number of applicants, a limited number of positions, or a hiring timeline that is either really fast or really short, or takes a while. So these are some things that kind of factor into how to think about how to move forward if you're feeling stuck in your internship or job search. So just so we're going to start with the employer perspective and go more in depth on that, because that might give you some insight on how to kind of make adjustments to your application process. And we're going to talk about what employers are looking for and how to match up your skill set so that they know that you're a good candidate, and then kind of how to apply. You can't control everything in the hiring process, and there are things that are out of our control, but you can control what your resume looks like, what your cover letter looks like, and what your application looks like. So that's the things to kind of remember. And then we're going to kind of touch base at the end of just again, like where you're stuck and what are some good things to do if you're kind of feeling like you're not moving forward. So first of all, we're going to jump to the employer perspective. So take your student hat off and start thinking like an employer who might be posting a job or an internship. So what you want to think about is what materials they're getting. Most employers, when they're hiring, they look for a resume. And they're possibly getting a lot of applicants. And so you never know how many applicants that might be. Some might be 10 applicants, it could be 100, it could be a lot more. But typically employers, like when they're getting applications, they tend to glance through them very quickly. So that means they're maybe looking at a resume anywhere from 6 seconds to 30 seconds, and they're looking just at a quick glance to see if the application is relevant to what they're hiring for. They're usually looking for specific experience and qualifications to be met. For example, if they're hiring for a role that must know Adobe Illustrator, they might be looking just to see if that's on the resume, and checking off those like basic qualifications. If they can't quickly see the qualifications, they often will pass. So this is just a real kind of a reality of sometimes how an employer looks at a resume, just because they're trying to find the best candidate as fast as possible. And they, sometimes just have limited time to really kind of look over the materials that they get. So when you're looking to make an application for a job or an internship, the question that you have to answer is, why are you applying to that particular opportunity? And you have to be customized. You can't send a lot of applications that are exactly the same to a lot of different companies. Every company, every position is different. So you need to kind of make it a more individual approach and answer the question of why you're applying to that opportunity. So as part of that application, you also want to write a resume that kind of gives employer kind of a clear idea that you are qualified for the opportunity. So you need to tailor it a little bit, so then when they're reading very quickly, they're able to see that you have the relevant skills and experience that they're looking for. And the one thing I do want to say, because it, is something that might be on your mind, is your experience does not have to be just art and design experience. It can be the jobs that you've had to kind of support yourself. It could be activities you've been involved with. But the key is how to think about how to highlight what might be relevant of what you've done in those roles that might be, highlighted in a way that's clear to the employer that that is related to the position they're hiring for. So here's an example. So say you're applying for something and they ask for ability to work as part of a team. So what you want to do is think of any experience you have where you've worked with others, and don't limit it to just a job. It could be an activity, it could be a class project, it could be a past internship if you had one, and that's what you want to highlight. So you're thinking like, what are they looking for? And then reflecting on your experience and thinking, where do you have that? Can you give some evidence? And it doesn't matter what type of experience it was, you're just kind of matching up like, yes, I have experience working with a team. So what you want to do as you're kind of tailoring your resume, you don't want to necessarily have a resume that just lists everything you've ever done. You want to actually make sure you connect the dots so that the picture is clear to employers. So that's what you're doing. So you're not necessarily listing all the data. You're finding a way to tell a story, give them a picture of who you are and how it relates to the job you're applying for. So a little bit more about what employers are looking for. So as you start looking at internship and job postings, they could be, you could be applying for a retail job, you could be applying for an internship for credit. It's, those are totally different areas, but there are some skills that all employers look for no matter what their industry is. And these are universal skills. And so as you start reading job description, you'll see this coming up over and over again. So these are coming from the National Association of Colleges and Employers, which kind of does research on what employers look for when they're recruiting college students. So the top skills that employers look for is problem solving, analytical skills, ability to work in a team, communication, initiative, work ethic, technical skills. Technical skills could be things that are more related to art and design, like Illustrator or working with a camera. But it could, but still it could be other things. But also look for flexibility, adaptability, being detail oriented, leadership, again, verbal communication skills and interpersonal skills. So these are the skills that employers are generally going to seek. And often these are things that you demonstrate. They're harder to teach. So they probably think, okay, I can teach someone Photoshop, but I can't teach them how to communicate with my team. I hope they already can do that to a degree. So that's why they often will prioritize these attributes when it comes to their hiring. So when you're writing your resume, when you're making your application, these are the skills that you would want to talk about and kind of demonstrate in your background. So as you start reading the job description, what the job description is, it's a summary of what the employer is looking for. And they're going to, when they get an applicant, they're going to measure that applicant against that job description. So it's really good to really pay attention to the job description because it'll literally say exactly what they're looking for. And then you also want to look at the company and kind of understand more about what the company does. And those two things are going to help you make an application that directly addresses what the employer is looking for. So I'm going to give you an example. So here is GBH, and they often hire interns from Mass Art and other places. They often post a lot of opportunities. So generally, if you're looking at the job description, you want to get context for the position in the company. Is it a big company, a small company? Is it in a specific department? Often the job description will have words like minimum qualifications, required qualifications, preferred qualification, hard skills, soft skills. So you want to kind of look at that language and kind of see how they explain what they're looking for. You should also research the company as well, and you can get more information so you can kind of understand the context of the position within the larger companies. And what you'll want to do is match up your skills with the position you're looking at, and then it's okay if you don't have everything. Note everything that you may be missing because that might be helpful as well. And one thing I want to say that when companies write a job and internship description, they're often describing their ideal candidate. If they could ask for anything in the world, they kind of will in the job description. But most of the time that ideal candidate doesn't exist. And so you want to kind of, yes, meet some of the qualifications, but not all candidates will not meet all qualifications. So it's good to just kind of know that even if you just meet some of them and not all, go ahead and apply, because that's totally okay. So like I said, there's going to be some terminology you'll run into. So there'll be required or minimum qualifications. And these are the things that the employer usually won't compromise on. And they're usually that all applicants have to have. So some examples might be must be a recent graduate or must be a current student, or they might say must be a industrial design major or something like that, or they might say must have some customer service experience. So those are the things where the employer usually is saying this is a must have. And then they'll often list preferred qualifications, and these are skills they look for, but not all applicants may have it. And these are the things that might set some applicants apart from others. And so, they don't, they'll look for them, but they don't necessarily rule someone out if they don't have them. And so an example might be like certain computer skills, like knowledge of Photoshop. So they might say like must have customer service experience, which is a must have. And then like we do prefer someone with Photoshop experience, and that might be something where it's a good to have, but they're willing to teach. So that's kind of how to interpret those terms in the job description. Some other things that you will see are soft skills versus hard skills. Soft skills are usually personality traits that kind of are about how you relate to other people. So ability to communicate, ability to adapt to changing situations, problem solving skills. These are very much the attributes that often employers will ask for. They're not, it's harder for them to teach someone to kind of be a part of a team. And then hard skills, it's something they can teach and is, that's trainable. So that could be computer, software, analytical skills, things like that. So you'll see some employers kind of listing different combinations of those. So as you start your application, you want to understand what they're looking for, and kind of put it in context of what the company does, and then match up your skills to the job description so you can articulate why you're interested and how you're qualified. And it's okay if you don't have all of the skills and experience that they're asking for, but it's good to be aware of where you might have some gaps. And then for the skills and experience you have, you want to give evidence that you have that so the employer can immediately see that on your resume. So continuing with the GBH internship position, this is an example of a position they had. So you will see skill set must be proactive and able to multitask. So that might be kind of something you can read as a required qualification. And then also under the skill set, they say experience with writing, television, video production, or working with children is preferred. So those are preferred skills where they, they may not necessarily find a candidate that has all of those qualifications, but those are things that, would set someone apart. So that's how you kind of read a job description is kind of what are essential, what are nice to haves, and then you can kind of think about how in an application you might address those. So an exercise that can be helpful is taking the job description and kind of putting it on one side and listing those things, and then listing your experience next to that. So this role asks for writing experience, and you can kind of think about your background, like where did you have some writing experience? Wrote some stories for some animations you did. You also helped on some film projects, which might relate to the TV production experience. And then you've also had some social media experience. So you can kind of like think about what they're looking for, and then next to it, note what you might have that can connect to that. So again, there's experience working with children, and then you might connect some nanny experience or after school arts program job you had. And even though it's not necessarily TV related, they did ask for experience working with children. So you can make a totally non-art related job related to this art internship. So that's what you want to kind of think about, is how to kind of inventory your experience and then match it up to what they're looking for. So the next step would be to kind of take all those ingredients and start putting them into your resume to make sure that they're clear to the employer. So a basic resume includes, you want to make sure you have your contact information, your MassArt email so that you're a MassArt student, a phone number because they'll need to call you if they want you to come in for an interview. You may or may not want to include a portfolio link. It depends on if they're asking for samples of your work. And then education, you want to put education first. They again know that you're a current student, since most internships will want a current student. And then also a section for experience. And this could include jobs, activities, sports, theater, volunteer, student leadership, a lot of different things. These are just things you've been involved with, and it doesn't matter if it's paid or unpaid, just places where you may be able to demonstrate some of the skills that they're asking for. So like I said, under experience, you can include anything that could be relevant to kind of show you have the skills that they want. So jobs, activities, sports, volunteer, and you can also even highlight key projects from classes if there's a way you can use them to kind of make them relevant to what they're applying for. And with each experience, you want to give descriptions of what you did. You want to show your soft and hard skills that they may be looking for. And remember, like your experience does not have to be art related to be relevant. You want to think about those key things that they're asking for, like teamwork, communication, collaboration. And if that's something you did, but it was with a unrelated kind of job outside of school, you can put that on and you can use that to kind of get yourself a related art internship. So just kind of think about what they're looking for, and then think about where you can demonstrate that from your background. So once again, these are often the skills that employers most seek, and most of them are not specifically art related. These are things that employers look for across all industries. So like problem solving, working in a team, written communication. So as long as you are kind of, when you're writing your resume, if you keep these in mind, you can often tailor your resume to many different jobs by keeping these key attributes in mind, since most employers will be seeking these things in some form. So here's an example. Here's a job that is not at all art related, but the first bullet is manages a team. That shows leadership, that shows working as part of a team, collaboration. So that's a way you can kind of you can demonstrate some of those attributes employers might be looking for. And then the second bullet is communicates expectations to the team. So there's a verbal communication element there. And so if you're applying somewhere and an employer is looking for someone with communication skills, that right away shows that you have had that experience in a previous role. Assisting customers, That's customer service. Every company has a customer, a client, a team. So there's always going to be that interpersonal work element and also customer service element at most employers. So kind of making clear that you have experience kind of taking care of people and meeting their needs, that can make this job relevant to anywhere you apply for. Then also the last bullet is open and close the cafe and reconciles the cash drawer, which may not necessarily be related to an art job, but being able to reconcile the cash drawer and making sure all the money is kept track of and accounted for, that shows attention to detail. So that's another thing that you might want to include. Things that may be what you want to take out for a job like this is taking out, specifics about making food or cleaning the store itself, because that may not be as relevant to where you're applying. So just shifting the focus onto the elements of the role that might be more helpful to the next role you're applying for and more relevant. So for a typical application, employers will always ask for a resume. Sometimes they will ask for a cover letter or a message, a kind of a letter of interest or something like that. They don't always ask for a cover letter. And then sometimes they'll ask for a portfolio, samples of their work, but they also may not. It might depend on the job itself and if it's kind of hands-on art or design work. What you want to do is you always want to follow the application instructions as closely as possible, because part of showing kind of some of your skill set is following directions and paying attention to those details when you do submit the application. So if you're not following directions, or if you're doing a sloppy application and missing something, that kind of shows that maybe you don't have attention to detail. So just treat the whole process as sort of like an audition for the job. And then another note is, even if they don't ask for a cover letter, I do recommend to always include a cover letter, just because your resume generally is a little bit impersonal and it's just kind of a list of things you've done. But that cover letter is kind of your way of writing a message to them and introducing yourself and saying why you're interested in that position and how you kind of relate your skills to that particular job. And so it's a chance for you to kind of make that personal connection and kind of put context on your resume and why you're applying. So again, you should always send some sort of message with your application, kind of explaining why you're interested and connecting it to their specific job. So, cover letter itself is a little bit of an old-fashioned term. It comes from the time where people would mail their resume to someone. They put a letter on top of that resume and put it in an envelope and like put a stamp on it. So it's an old-fashioned term, but nowadays sometimes people will call it a letter of interest, a message, or an email of interest. Often if you're applying, you might be applying by email with a resume attached. The email itself would be the cover letter. So you want to actually have a message in that email that is kind of nicely written and relevant to what you're applying for. You usually want to format a cover letter like a professional letter. And sometimes if you're sending it by email, it might be the email, but sometimes if you're applying on an online site, they might ask you to upload a PDF document. So it sometimes takes different formats. So what the cover letter does, it says who you are, what position you're applying for. And that's just like a simple way of making sure your resume gets to the right hiring team. You don't want your resume to not go for the fashion design internship, but to go to the accounting internship. You want to make sure it goes to the right place so they know what you're applying for. And then you also have a chance to explain why you're interested in that particular position and what skills you have that are related to that job. So this is where reading the job description and assessing what skills you have is going to be helpful. You can say, I saw that you look for someone who has film video experience. I have this, I've worked on these projects. I know you also look for people who have experience working with kids. I have previous work as a nanny and also at a arts program for kids. So you can kind of like mention what they're looking for and then directly kind of connect what your background is. So you're making sure that they don't miss it and they don't kind of give a pass on your application. They know that you understand what they're looking for and you're giving it directly to them. It's also a place where you can give additional information that might be helpful. You can link directly to samples of work. You can give, sometimes they'll ask for extra questions to be answered in the application. You can use the cover letter to do that. So overall, it's just generally a good way to kind of send a professional message with your application. And then it also demonstrates your communication skills and professionalism, because often in every role, there's, communicating and working as part of a team, sending emails, and the cover letter essentially is kind of demonstrating that you're able to communicate in a business manner, in a professional environment. So cover letters are generally pretty short. So I'd probably say 3 paragraphs, maybe 4, maybe half a page. So there's usually a greeting, dear first name, last name, or dear hiring manager. State what you're applying for, how you found out about it. And then the body paragraph is kind of the main one where you're talking about your background, your experience, and experience that's relevant to what you're applying for, and then connect it directly to their job description and their company. And you can reference the job description saying, I saw that you're looking for this. This is what I have. And then the closing paragraph is thanking them for their time and consideration and inviting them to contact you for an interview. And you want to make sure to include your contact information just so they always know who to get in touch with if they really like your resume and cover letter. So lastly, I'm going to kind of go back to kind of if you're in the process, if you're feeling like you are getting stuck, kind of ways you can kind of take a moment to like stop and kind of assess what's going on. So again, checkpoint 1 is kind of at the beginning, not sharing how to get started. Checkpoint 2 is maybe you're applying and you have not been hearing back. And then checkpoint 3 is like maybe you had an interview, but you didn't get further than that. So let's talk about some possibilities of what might be going on and things you can kind of, adapt at each step. So if you're at checkpoint 1, sometimes if you're not sure what you want to do, it might be a question of, do you know what opportunities out there? Does the sort of stuff you have in mind exist? Are you not finding postings you're interested in, or are you, if you're finding postings, are you feeling like you're not able to apply? This is a little bit of a tricky stage where sometimes it takes a little bit of research, but self-reflection. What I would recommend if you're finding yourself in this and you're not sure how to get started is making an appointment with me, and we can kind of talk about what you want to do, and ways you can kind of find out, if that internship exists, if that industry exists, how to do research, how to connect yourself to a direction that you want to go. And there are many, because art is a unique world, there might be different ways you can go depending on what you want to explore and how you can find out what's possible. So checkpoint 2, I find that this is a common place that a lot of us get stuck on, is when you're applying to a lot of places, but you're not kind of hearing back or you're not getting interviews. And there could be different things going on. And I mean, as much as I would love the employers to get back to everyone who applies, that sadly doesn't always happen. So it's, we can't necessarily control that, but this is a good time to stop and think about kind of what you can control. And one thing to be aware of is that applying to lots of internships, like hundreds, doesn't necessarily increase your chances of getting the internship. Often it's going to be being more thoughtful and kind of doing higher quality, tailored applications to internships are going to be more productive than larger numbers. So what you want to do is think about how you can adapt your application, how you can tailor it. Start looking at what you're applying for. Are you applying for the right roles? Are you applying for roles that ask for seniors and you're a sophomore? It could be something like that. Maybe you need to think about applying to things that are more relevant to where you are right now in your education. It could be, are you making your qualifications clear to the recruiter? Do you need to think about how to tweak your resume? Maybe you have tons of experience they're looking for, but they're not seeing it right away, or it's not clear on your resume. Maybe it's a chance to kind of revisit your resume and kind of making sure that's clear as you're sending it out. Some basic things are just, are you following instructions? Did you apply to the right email? Did it have, did you kind of put follow the instructions that they gave? So some of it is just a good chance to kind of step back and assess what you're doing and see if you can make any tweaks. This isn't necessarily saying that you are doing, you've kind of doing something wrong, but it's always good to kind of like assess, can you make your application stronger? Can you improve your process that you maybe get a little bit further into it? So that's just a little bit, again, if you feel like you are kind of falling into this area, you can make an appointment with me in career development, and we can go over your resume, we can go over your cover letters. We can talk about possibilities of, what this might look like. Sometimes getting an outside eyeballs on your resume can be helpful. You might be so close to it, you might be missing something really obvious, or you might be doing everything right, and it's just the time to kind of assess, like, what else can you do to kind of get a little bit further. So check point 3. So this one is tricky, but first is the good news. That means that your resume and your application is getting you getting a response. So that means like you heard back and something is working. So that's really important to acknowledge. Where kind of sometimes in checkpoint 3 it gets tricky because it could mean you're doing everything right, but maybe they had multiple candidates and maybe one just had, a little bit more experience or a different skill set that kind of stood out. So it could be just like, a matter of just like being the one that misses out. But it also could be a chance where you think about, well, is my when I interview, am I kind of showing off my skills as best I can? Maybe it's a time to kind of brush up on some interview skills. So that's one thing you could think about doing. So this is something to just kind of think about if you're getting to the interview and you feel like you're not getting past that interview. So one thing because of this, I want to highlight is we're having a workshop next week called Interviewing Skills, which I recommend you all attend, even if you don't have an interview lined up, because it's harder once you have that interview, because you may not necessarily have the time to kind of do an interview, mock interview, or learn some of the skills before then. So it's good to kind of do it in advance. So this is the same time next week on April 3rd. The other thing I want to touch is that at each step of the process, if you are feeling like you're doing a lot and you're kind of submitting applications, but you're not kind of moving forward, you want to make sure that you check in with career development, because we can sometimes kind of be that outside perspective to kind of help you figure out if there's something that is a small tweak that might help you move forward. And there's no like, sure thing that will kind of, solve everything, but we can kind of help look at your application, look at your strategy, where you're applying, and give you some ideas of what might be helpful going forward. And in a minute, I will show you like a quick demo on how to make an appointment. So I'm just going to do a quick recap. So as you apply for internships and jobs, you want to make sure you understand the job description and what they're looking for. Make sure you think about how your skill set matches up so that you are clear to the employer what the candidate that they're looking for. You'll want to tailor your resume and then use the cover letter to kind of really clarify that you are a good fit for that position. And make sure to answer the question of why you're applying for that position, so it kind of makes sense for them why they have an application from you. And then, as always, it's good to step back and reflect and revise your applications as needed. It's always good to kind of like keep growing, keep learning how to apply, just so that, if you're finding you're getting a good response or a bad response, you kind of know what is working or is not working, and that you can always kind of adapt so that you can kind of move things a little forward. So that's my information. I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'll just give you a little bit of a demonstration on how to make an appointment. Give me one sec. So if you feel like you need some help with the application process, I do recommend, like, whatever step you're stuck on, it's good to make an appointment. Because I will be the outside sort of eyeballs and be able to tell you, what tweaks might be helpful, or, what you're doing that's like right, what's working well, what possibilities there are, to kind of tweak things a little. So if you're making an appointment, you go into Handshake, you go to Career Center, and then you go to the appointment section, and then schedule a new appointment. You're going to select student appointments, and then you can do internship advising. And this is a general catch-all appointment type for any internship questions relating to the process, anything you have at all. So you can select a time that works for you. And then it'll just like let you kind of enter this information and do requests, and it's automatically confirmed and on my calendar. So that's how you would make an appointment. And just you can also make it in virtual or in person, so you can select whatever format you'd like. So this is just a way you can just go make an appointment. There's no emails or anything. It's automatically confirmed. Cool. So that is the quick tip on how to make an appointment. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I am, happy to take any questions anyone may have or go over anything. Does anyone have any questions? You can put in the chat, or you can unmute yourself, whatever works for you. Anyone at all? So I'll do it. I'll question. Have you all been applying for internships? You can raise your hand, or
Oh, we have a few questions.
okay.
Yeah, if you want to go over the last two that we got in the chat.
Okay, so could we review the first resume cover letter slide as well as the cover letter formatting one? Let me see if I think I understand what the question was. I'm not sure what you mean by the resume formatting slide. Was this the slide that you're looking for? Eli.
I was just wondering if it was possible to review the first slide, like the intro to the resume and cover slide when we first started that section, as well as the slide that had like how to format the cover letter and like write the professional letter part of it.
Okay. Okay. This is the first one I have for the resume. But I mean, if you want, we can put a resource for both the resume format and the cover letter format in the chat. Or did you?
That would be good as well. I think there was a slide. This is the slide.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Did you just want to copy it down, or did you want me to go over it?
I mostly just didn't have a chance to write everything down.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do have some resources in the chat for cover letters and for resumes that I'm going to put them in the chat in a minute, that you can kind of access anytime. And we can also email these slides after the presentation if you find that helpful.
Grab the
emailing the slides would be great.
Okay.
Rebecca, I can grab the files from the website.
Yeah, just the cover letter and the basic student resume, if you can get those handy. Let's see, the platforms recommended for internship searching besides Handshake. So platforms, you're not limited to Handshake when you're looking for an internship. So places you can look there's some general places like Indeed, LinkedIn, Google Jobs, and those are kind of aggregators where they find postings from a lot of places and put them in one place. There is a art specific one for Massachusetts. that I find helpful for, especially like if you're interested in museum jobs. I'm gonna put that in the chat. It's called hiredculture.org. And this is run by, hold on, sorry, I need to send that again. This is run by the state of Massachusetts. So that's one that I think it would be really helpful. There are some specific things that are industry specific. So like if you're in a major like industrial design or architecture that has professional associations, sometimes those professional associations have job boards and you can go there to look for industry specific job postings. Those also might show up other places. If there are companies that you're specifically interested, you can often go to their websites because companies might have job boards on their website as well. So that's another place you can look. I would probably say if you're kind of looking at all those and you're still, not finding ones you're interested in, I would recommend making an appointment because sometimes, as much as like some employers post stuff, there are employers who don't necessarily always post their internships. But if you were to reach out to them on your own, it might create some opportunities. But for that, I'd recommend making an appointment with me because then I can be much more tailored and specific to where you're looking for an internship, what field it's in, and all of that stuff. So I would recommend that. But those are some places to start that are outside of Handshake. Does that answer your question, or do you have any other questions? Any other questions from anyone else?
I think also should mention that there's 2 other people that do resume critiques, so
Yes, so there's all of us do resume critiques. So if you're just looking for resume critiques, you can make an appointment with me, with Meg, and I believe with Mary Ellen as well. We're all on there. And then internship advising tends to be much more getting into the weeds about where to find opportunities. If you're reaching out to an employer, if you're doing some research, that's something that goes to me, and I can kind of help you with that. So definitely, make appointments with us because we can give some insights. Any other questions from anyone else?
I think we're all good in the chat.
Okay, well, I'm gonna put my email in the chat. So if you think of a question, you can always make an appointment, but if you want to email me, if you have a question after this, like feel free to email me. I'm happy to kind of help you outside of the presentation as well. So my email is in the chat. And we also have cover letter guide and resume guide in the chat as well. Well, so I think we're good. Okay, well, thank you all for coming. We will send out copies of the slides after this, and we will also let you know when recording is available to view. Thank you all for coming.